What's up, everyone? This is Justin Kahn. Welcome to my podcast, The Quest, where I dive into the ups and downs of trailblazers around me to help you figure out life and where you want to be. Before we start, bang that subscribe button for unfiltered conversations on tech, wellness, and entertainment dropping every Tuesday. Today, my guest is Kelly Mi Lee. Kelly's the star and executive producer of the Netflix reality show Bling Empire. If you haven't watched it, it's like Crazy Rich Asians meets Keeping Up with the Kardashians. If you want to hear the story of how Kelly went from having over $150 million confiscated by the federal government, cracking down on her ex-husband, to going on to produce one of Netflix's most popular shows, you've got to check out this conversation. Cool. Well, Kelly, thanks so much for joining me on The Quest.
Thank you so much, Justin. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we usually start by diving into people's origin stories and like where they came from. So, my understanding, you grew up in China, is that right? And then came to the US?
Yeah, I grew up in China. I was born in a town called Kunming. So Kunming is a smaller town, so it's not as big as Shanghai and Beijing. It's also called the Spring City because all year round the weather is just kind of like LA. I moved here when I was about 9.5, 10 years old. My mom wanted me to have a better education. She was doing anti-cancer research at UIC. My whole family are in the medical field. When my dad and I came out here, my mom was working 2 other side jobs, and in addition to doing research, she was working at restaurants and cleaning. And then my dad had to pick like a carpet cleaning job because he didn't have a visa. So I remember he was making $40 a night for cleaning one carpet. And we lived at first apartment was about $250 a month. And I still remember, to this day, I hate the noise of rats because when I was sleeping at nighttime, there was like rats in the walls. And then it just freaked me out so much. So to this day, rats are like my least favorite animal. So I will not go on like fear factors and when there's rats involved. After a year, my dad kind of just, as a man, he had a lot of ego. He didn't want to really stay here any longer. And he went back to China. So my mom and I stayed in the US. I think that was a huge turning point in my life where, before people were always asked, what's the one thing you regret? And I always said, I wish I told my dad just to stay in the US with us. But, growing up in the Chinese culture, you tend to not talk too much. You kind of let the adult talk, let the adult make the decision. As a kid, we didn't really have a voice, right? So I was always brought up not to have a voice in that sense. So that was always kind of one of my turning point. And then, for a long time, I really didn't realize, why my dad left. But then, now that I'm a little bit older, I was like, he wasn't strong enough. He wasn't man enough to stay with, my mom and I and struggle it out. And then afterwards, my mom kind of worked herself up. My mom's a superwoman. She couldn't be a doctor anymore because she had to go through the whole residency all over again, and she had nobody to support us, right? So I wish my dad at the time, like, hey, you know what? Go do your residency all over again. Let me work odd jobs and we'll make it work, But he wasn't strong enough for that. And my mom got into the finance business and she did really well. And we ended up moving to a suburb called Hingsdale afterwards so I can be in a better school system. My first school when I was 4th grade was all Hispanic. I was like probably one of the only 2 Asian people in the school. And then the middle school one was mostly blacks. And then my high school was mostly like 97%, not just white Caucasian, but blonde. Everybody had blonde hair and tan, So I was thrown into very different situations. I think that's also why I'm able to connect with different, it doesn't matter race, age, I'm able to connect with a lot of people. And then after graduating school, that was in Chicago. When I was 18, I got my life insurance license as soon as I turned 18. So I started working for New York, life insurance license. I've always been a hustler. Like since I was 12 years old, I was babysitting. I don't think I asked my mom really for money, like for allowance. I was like 12. I started babysitting. And then when I was like 15, I started working at restaurants. And, even when I was underage, to be honest, I was working at nightclubs. I was doing hosting. I was doing bottle service. I was doing bartending. Started managing. So it's definitely like a hustle mentality and just, make it work. And I moved out to LA when I was 21 and then was in food and beverage I was in food and beverage from when I was pretty much 16, 15, all the way till 25, 26. I ended up buying my own restaurant in Sunset. Started one of the first speakeasy places. It was Jim Morrison's old apartment. We call it the Morrison Room. But it was a fun experience, but I just got burnt out from the restaurant business. And that's kind of, I'm sorry, I don't know how far I should have gone with the starting off point.
That was amazing. I love that. So it sounds like your mom, just to go back to your mom, because it sounds like she really sacrificed for you, which is
She did.
pretty incredible.
She yeah, she sacrificed everything because even when my dad left when they got a divorce, I was like, she should. I mean, I want her to find happiness. I want her to find a love, but at the same time, I only remember she dated one guy, and then that guy's son liked me, and I was like 16. My mom was like, nope, like it just broke up. So she never remarried. She never. I to this day, I don't even know about any love interest she really had. Just because she wants me to be in a safe environment and happy environment.
That's incredible. Did she want you to do anything specific with your career? Like, what did she think when you
Oh,
were out there hustling and all that?
yeah, she didn't get it at all. She would just like, with the Asian parents is like, you have doctor, a lawyer, or accountant or engineer to pick from, right? So for my family, it was always they thought I was going to follow the footsteps of become in the medical field and be a doctor, but it just wasn't me. I didn't click with me in school. I was an okay student, but I was never really that great a student. Like I
Yeah.
just, I don't like, I know I was smart, but I didn't want to. For sometimes when I put in the work, I'm like, what's the point of this? I'm like, for me, I'm like, I'd rather learn on the field. Like when there's money involved and there's like real reasons involved, like I'm focused. But like if I'm doing homework, I'm like, oh, what's the point?
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so then you went into F&B and like were building out your restaurant. What happened with it? How'd you get out of it?
So I was by myself. That was lesson number one. My first business I ran by myself was don't run business by yourself. Have good partners because I was
Yeah.
just, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And eventually, I think about 2 years after the restaurant, I bought a business partner on board. And I kind of, at the time, I was just kind of over it. And unfortunately, he mismanaged. He signed my name on different documents and just, kind of thing. And then the little bar next to me was called Cat Club, and they sold it to and then it turned into this place called Rock and Riley's. And these guys pitched me, they're like, hey, why don't we do a partnership since you don't, you want to kind of move on with your life? Why don't we do like you have some ownership of Rock and Riley's, we'll take over your restaurant. Um, and then the deal kind of got a little complicated just because that new business partner I bought on board. So I was like, just buy me out. So they ended up buying me out, and then I was really happy to get out of that business. I
Yeah.
learned a lot though, a lot. Learned a lot.
There's nothing like that first startup or company where you're like really on the hook and grinding and you kind of do everything wrong uh, to like teach
Yeah,
you a life lesson of like how to make your way in the world, right?
yeah. One of the things I really learned is that life goes on. Like, you have to figure out because there's days that during payroll you're like, the next day you're like, I have enough money to either pay rent or pay my staff, and then it's no longer just about you. It's about you got to figure out, you got to make sure your staff's okay and their family's okay. So it's a lot of pressure, and yeah. But one of the things I learned is that life goes on, things work itself out.
So one of the things that I wanted to hear more about in the show, but you didn't really go into was in like one of the first episodes you talk about how you got married and then your husband,
Mm-hmm.
it turned out, was running a scam and got $150 million confiscated by the government. Can you talk
Hmm.
about how you got there?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I feel like that was another lifetime. I was like, so I was 21, he was 20 at the time. We met in Vegas, and I just always kept as a friend. There's no love interest for me. And then fast moving forward, I think I was about 24, he was 23. We end up meeting up, and then had a really great love story. We fell in love, we got engaged, we got married, and I respect him a lot at the time, which is because again, he was an immigrant like me. He was born in Beijing, and he hustled his way from nothing to building. At that time, for me, at least the surface, it was a very successful business. So yeah, I didn't. It was just weird that after we had this amazing romance marriage, I thought I was going to be with this person for the rest of my life. And we were separated because it was, you know, at that young age, I think he was trying to find out who he is as well. There's a lot of insecurity. We were giving each other the complete different love language. Now that, I'm learning more about love language and psychology, I was giving him act of service, and he wanted word of affirmation, and I was
Yeah.
giving him the last because for me, I was, I'm growing up. It's like tough love in the Asian culture. It's like, it's like you give them tough love. And then he was giving me gifting. That was his priority. but my gifting was the lowest one. For me was quality time was my highest. So we were just just didn't know how to communicate. And then we didn't really talk about a lot of issues. Everything was kind of swept under the rug because in the Asian culture, again, we were never taught how to speak our emotions and how to voice our emotions. I didn't discover this till like way later, till my 30s. But he had other women on the side that I later found out about. So we ended up separating. And then after we were already separated, we're going through the process of divorce. I had a knock on my door at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon, like on a Friday, and it was like from the FTC looking for him. I'm like, oh, he doesn't live here. I didn't even know what the FTC was. I had to go going like Federal Trade Commission. What's that? But yeah, this whole thing kind of just started unveiling afterwards. And I was learning as it goes too, because I was reading articles and I was just completely confused. And, it was a big shock where I went from, and I was doing really well financially myself as well. But the money I earned during the time we were married all got tangled into this lawsuit. And so, you go from spending whatever you want on your black Amex to going to the gas station. You're like, I can't get gas. How do I get gas? So, it was a big change, but end of the day for me, because I've struggled before moving, to the US. So I was, I know that I had to strap up and downgrade and live a different lifestyle, but it definitely took a while to change, because even though that in your head, but you're going from, living, $500,000 a month to, I was like, I think of my first apartment after I got everything set up. I was like, okay, my expense now is $20,000 a month. I'm like, I can do this. But then that money goes really fast. You're, oh my God, I got to go even lower. At that time also, it was weird because I consciously, I feel like I was doing really well, but subconsciously I was having memory loss and I was dealing with a lot of stress. My body was acting out. And that's when I started really learning that, your body and mind and your pain kind of all connect. All life lessons, but
That's super powerful. How did you learn that about yourself? What techniques did you use to kind of cope or adapt to your new circumstances?
I didn't know how to at the beginning. It was very difficult, but obviously later on I realized meditation, self-love, just healing and just taking a proper time off, because I was always go, 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 go. It's like, but there's times that you need to sit back, pause, relax, and then figure out the next step. I was also very lost at the time because I didn't really know what I want to do with my life, at a time after going through a divorce, losing everything. And, career-wise, I was also very confused. It was a huge change.
And so then how did you find your way to film and production?
I think God just led me here. I have no idea. I always had a lot of friends in entertainment. And, when I started doing I did a little bit of management for working with some music artists. And then at that time, everybody wanted their own streetwear line. This is when OVO first came out with Drake. So everybody wanted their own streetwear line. So then I ended up starting a company with my current partner, which I still have to this day. And we started building brands and building lines for different influencers and celebrities. And through that, I was able to help bring them some deals. Again, it's just friends, just more of relationships. And my first official job, actually, I have to thank Jason Ma for. Jason at the time had East West Artists, and he was looking for somebody to kind of run the day-to-day operation. And Jason and I have been friends for a while at the time, and he saw that. He also before all this, I was in. My ex-husband and me started a company called Be Great Partners, and we were one of the first tech incubators in Los Angeles. And we had different funds, and we invested. Each fund invested in about 20 different companies. We had a giant office on Wilshire. So Jason kind of saw my work ethic and basically how committed I am, how hardworking I am, and he knows that I have the relationships. So he gave me that chance to come in and run his company and partner up with him. And that was really my first official entertainment job. So yeah, he's really helped open that door for me.
And tell me about how you got to producing Bling Empire. It was your idea, right?
Yeah. So 2013, I was at a meeting at UTA actually, and it was they were talking about this book, Crazy Rich Asians. I was like, what is this book? So I went back and read it. I absolutely loved it because I was like, it's so relatable to me just because, I travel so much and there's different type of Singapore. I had a house in Singapore for 2 years. I'm like Singaporean Chinese type, like mainland Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese. Even like some of the places they mentioned in the book, they're all, real places that my friend's family own. So I was like, oh my God, what a great idea for an unscripted show. And then start kind of putting the project together. But it took a while just because, again, all Asian cast. We had some great people. I had some great partners, with me along the ride, but none of them really worked out just because, again, networks, it's hard. They don't want to really take a chance on an all Asian cast. And then when Crazy Rich Asian came out, it just completely blew everybody away. And then my phone started ringing off the hook. And then at that time, I already partnered up with Jeff Jenkins. Jeff left Be My Murray and started his own production company. So, I'm just, very grateful that I had to partner up with him. And then he sold it to Netflix, which is the best partner we can ask for just because it's such a global platform.
So I'm so curious, like having, completely on the outside, like what's the experience of producing a reality show? Like what are the steps you have to go through to make it happen? You were like, there should be a show like Crazy Rich Asians, with these types of people. Like, how do you go from that into actually creating it?
The biggest hurdle is that most people who are crazy rich Asian is mostly a lot of family money, especially at our age. It's a lot of like that kind of wealth is family money. Asian culture doesn't like to have their family out there. They like to be very low key. You don't air out your dirty laundries. So that was the really hard process. Out of the current cast, the first person that signed on with me was King. So, King's family is a very wealthy Singaporean family. So I know both his parents. So, it took a while, but they gave me their blessing, and then kind of went from there. However, after I left East West Artists, I started producing full time, but as a scripted producer. So I produced televisions and movies, but scripted sides. For this project, because I wasn't going to be in front of camera, I was going to be behind the camera. But then one thing that led to another. Jeff's like, you have to be on camera. So when I was on camera, I had to turn that side of brain completely off. So I wasn't in any of the creatives when it comes to Bling Empire. I was in the editing room. I saw the show when everybody saw it, when the whole world saw it. So I had no control of anything. But I'm really grateful for that because, again, it would have been too much for me. It's better because audience are smart with reality. Because reality show, there's no beginning, middle, end. It's not like a script. You don't know where the story is going to take you. So you really have to be vulnerable. You really have to stay present. So yeah, for me, as far as how great a show turned out, it's completely, Jeff and the showrunner and their team. They did all the work and they were in the editing room. I wasn't in it at all.
Did you have to recruit like all the cast members, or did they was that a natural group of friends, or like how did that come about?
And it's a pretty small circle in Los Angeles for, but for like Christine, I've known for over 10 years, but Jeff actually recruited Christine in. And then Jeff also brought Anna in as well. I didn't know Anna Shea before Jeff. And the rest of them, it's kind of from me, King and me. But we all got to hang out for a good year or so before cameras start rolling. So by that time, everybody's already very comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why this cast is so great, because everybody bought something to the table. Everybody was vulnerable. Everybody showed things that, even if I knew Christine and Gabe for a very long time, but I didn't know a lot of the stories and the struggles they were going through until we were filming. So I think it actually brought a lot of us closer together.
Yeah, really, people were put stuff out there. Like that was pretty vulnerable. And especially
we had a live birth. We had a live birth on camera.
Yeah, that was intense. I was impressed. I was really impressed with because I kind of thought you were in the in the editing room or the production side as well here, and like you really kind of went vulnerable with your relationship like live on camera. I can't imagine what that feels like.
It was difficult just because I feel like because every part of me was so together, and then from the outside view in as well, being a entrepreneur, businesswoman, a philanthropist, everything from the outside looks so together where it's hard to show the inside where everything was falling apart. Your home life is normally your foundation. Your home life, when everything's good, you're able to go out and do better things. For me, it was like my home life was there was a lot of great moments, but there's also a mess, right? Of course, editing, 3-hour therapy sessions gets edited to 2-3 minutes, so a lot of things obviously will edit out. So, there's also we had a lot of great and positive things about our relationship, but the show really helped me with going to therapy and really discovering therapy. Because I've heard mental health, I've heard mental well-being, but I never really kind of took that step. But during filming, that's when I think that's what I got the most out of it. After filming, I started doing a lot of therapy individually, and that's when I really started discovering myself. Like, I didn't realize there's so many layers. For me, it was always like, oh, this is the way I am, but I never asked myself why. And then when you're able to start, basically connect with why you are the way you are to a past experience, things just start making sense.
Yeah, I found the same. That's amazing, actually. That's such an angle that like people probably wouldn't expect, to hear. Like, but that's an amazing journey. And I found that like in my own journey, like the most important thing that I've ever learned in my life is like all these skills around understanding myself. And like, I went through this process over the last couple of years where I learned so much about myself and like how things in my childhood really like played out in these patterns when I was an adult. One thing I talk about a lot on this podcast is I realized a couple of years ago that everything that I did as an adult, like trying to start companies and be an entrepreneur and be successful, was all trying to just get the approval from the people around me when I was a kid. I was like playing that pattern out as an adult. And so, it was kind of never enough as I layered more and more success and, we sold Twitch and all this other stuff. Like I would always just be looking around the corner for what's the next thing, and I never really, it was very subconscious for me. Like I never wasn't even aware of it. It was just like a kind of an algorithm going on in the background of my, my mind. But, it wasn't until, doing a lot of self-work that I learned that. And therapy was like a big part for me of like learning about myself.
That's amazing. And one of the things you kind of mentioned is that, and I realized about myself as well as a lot of Asian Americans or just Asian in general, we always have the negative core belief that we're not good enough. It's because, the tiger mom syndrome growing up, when I got a 90 on the test, I'm like, Mom, I worked so hard, I got a 90 on this test. She's like, why didn't you get 100? I'm like, but it's an A, it's the same thing. She goes, but you know the difference, so nothing was ever good enough. Nothing was ever good enough. So, so like, I think a lot of, for me again, and when I start talking to other Asian Americans and Asians, it's just that I realized, our negative core, we all have a similar negative core belief, which is we feel like we're not good enough, And then also another thing I realized is that we were never taught the work-life balance. It was always like work, hustle, study, and then go to, get your master's and then go get a great job, where, your off times is as important as your on time, like you need to have that balance.
Yeah.
And break.
Taking care of yourself is something that you never learn as when you're most cultures, but especially like Asian culture, it's not part of the script.
I was never really comfortable with myself, like being by myself until like literally early last year, 2020. I mean, this is very recent. So that was also why I think I had a lot of codependency issues. I was always trying to help other people. It was never about like what I want to do. It was always like, how can I help the other person? I would drop anything just to, and also another thing is the same thing with, I had a problem saying no. Like, if somebody wants me to go somewhere for a birthday, for dinner, I always say yes. And I always round myself, I get dragged so many directions and I always, get tired. And I'm like, wait, saying no is as important as saying yes. I want to help everybody, but I never really slow down. Like, what do I want? Like, it's okay if I don't want to go to these things. They'll understand, but like, yeah, exactly. Like you said.
How did you learn to set those boundaries and kind of prioritize yourself?
Therapy, reading. And I think, obviously the pandemic is, played a part in it just because everything stopped. And I was just running myself thin. I was taking a lot of courtesy meetings. And even with those courtesy meetings, I'm like, oh no, don't worry, I'll drive to you. I just want to make other people's life easier. And, when everything slowed down and I just really, there's not much to do other than, and at a time also I was by myself, I was single. So for kind of living by myself and really just have to, occupy your time. And then I realized there's so much information, there's so much knowledge in books, online and podcasts, YouTube. I never had time for that. I was always just go, 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 go. I never had time. So, just seeking out knowledge, learning. And I feel like for the first time I start quote unquote learning more, but different side of my brain,
Yeah.
And therapy. Yeah. Therapy, books, just so much knowledge out there. So that's a great thing about internet nowadays.
I know. So what were some of the books or YouTubes or, kind of information sources that really stuck out to you?
I read this book called, and I actually am going through her program. I'm still going through it. Her name's Jody Rosenberg, Dr. Jody Rosenberg. She has a book called Be the Cause. It's basically breaks down. It has has 9 panels in a chart, and the 9 panels is really about your past and how you were rerouted, right? And in the present, how when you go to chaos, you go to defense, you act out, and then how to reroute your brain. So that really made sense to me because before I went to go to therapy, people were like, well, tell me about yourself. And there's just no course plan. And I'm very I'm a structural person. Like I like things that's like logical. So it really kind of broke down. And then when I had the visual, effect of that, Jim Quick's Limitless, I thought was phenomenal. That book was so great about how to train your brain and, your brain's a muscle and how to practice and work it. I also read this book called The Daughterless Project, which talks about women and that lost their father. So that was also very enlightening for me, just because I didn't really think that instant where my dad left really affected me, because I'm I was kind of closed off. I kind of was blocking myself. So I really didn't think it, because I didn't act out, right? I kind of suppressed my feelings. But yeah. So I didn't realize how much that affected me. And when I was reading it, and I just realized all the things in there. It's like, fatherless daughter tend to stay in a relationship a lot longer than should. They tend to have low self-confidence. They have abandonment issue. I was like, oh my God, they're not comfortable with themselves. I was like, check. And I'm like, oh my God, So just learning all that stuff. And also, almost 50% of fatherless daughters end up having fatherless daughters. So it's because they don't know. It's a trend that they pass on. So that was super interesting to me. So yeah, I was just those books, just reading it. It's amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned meditation earlier. Do you practice meditation?
I don't do as regularly as I really should. But meditation is great. It disconnects. I'm still getting better at it. It's been a journey, because I started exploring meditation it's about like 7 years ago, I think. Yeah. I had a coach, and I would do it. I listen to I use Headspace or Insight right now. I try to do at least 5 to 10 minutes a day. But it's something that I for sure need to explore more and get better at.
Yeah. One thing about meditation was, I'm pretty new to meditation too, probably for the last couple of years. I've been practicing regularly for the last couple of years, but it really helped me be okay with being alone. Like I used to really not be okay with downtime. Like I would always want my brain to be occupied. I'd look at my phone all the time. I would, be at my computer. Like if I had to read something, and when I started meditating after the first 6 months, I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay. At first I was super bored. I was like, I want to stop. After 1 minute, I'd be like checking the time to see how much time it elapsed. But after a couple months, then I started to realize, oh, I can just be okay and with nothing happening, or awkward silence, or just being alone, or, without any sort of stimulation. And that was really revolutionary to me, because I don't think I was okay that for years, decades.
The stillness. There's a book called The Surrender Experience. If you haven't read it, check that
Michael
out.
Singer.
Great book. Such a great book. Yeah. And that was kind of, I think, the first book I read about meditation. And it's so great. It's the stillness. And we, especially, with our society right now, there's just so much going on all the time. There's a lot of, visual simulations and all that stuff. So yeah, I love that. And then it's for sure, same thing with kind of on your journey that I need to do more of. It's for sure that I need to, keep practicing.
Awesome. And the thing you were saying about your phone actually reminded me of something that I also, I've been bad at recently, but I used to do, which was I deleted all the social media apps off my phone, and actually my email, and pretty much all the distracting apps, all e-commerce apps. And I locked it so that my wife had the password to install apps. So because I was a super phone addict. I was, looking at my phone at dinner, and when other people were around, it was very compulsive. And so I like deleted everything, and that kind of gave me a lot of enforced stillness. Times when I like just couldn't look at my phone, entertain myself when I was in an Uber or something. I just have to sit there in the backseat and like look out the window.
Yeah, I tried that. There's a whole thing like, turn off all your notifications so you don't get any notification. I tried it. And I also tried to turn my phone into the gray color.
Yeah, I did that too.
At all.
Yeah.
I couldn't deal with it. I turned it back on afterwards. But you're right. So when you're sitting in a car, and one of the most awkward thing I remember was, I think this is one time I forgot my phone. I was meeting somebody for coffee and they were late. And I was just like, what do I do? Like, I was just like so awkward sitting there. Like, it just felt so uncomfortable. But then that's also, you realize you're like, the phone, it runs our life sometimes. And it's not they run our life and we have to kind of stop.
Yeah.
They're programming us,
Exactly. It is. I mean, it is like tech, tech is really figuring out ways to program us into it, like you said, into doing kind of what the companies want to do. I mean, I've been on the other side of that, and I think it is creating like an unhealthy habit loop in a lot of ways. I actually remember, you brought up like waiting for someone. I was doing a meeting with someone. It was in Hollywood actually, and I was like, I'm there, and they were like super late. Like they were probably like 30 minutes late, but it was like, I was kind of like, this is like typical LA shit, whatever, I'm going to like not be pissed off. And so I actually just sat there, and I didn't have my phone, my phone was like all locked down or whatever. So I couldn't, I was like, I'll just sit here and be patient and meditate. And I was doing that. And it turns out they had like came out to the lobby and looked for me, but I was like kind of just sitting there, like not paying attention, just like in my own meditation zone. And so they thought I wasn't even there. And so after like 40 minutes, I think we finally connected, but it was the downside of maybe like not being on your phone.
But that's kind of cool though, because you're just not bothered by other people's lateness or whatever. You're centered. You're just doing your own thing, which I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was.
They made you wait. You make them wait.
Yeah. It was funny actually to compare the experience, because I remember having had the same experience also in LA, of course, like maybe a couple, 5-6 years prior, and being super pissed. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? He's like making me sit outside and like, wait in the lobby for like, I don't know, 40 minutes or whatever. And then this time, I was like completely okay with it. Is that surrender experience, I guess.
The surrender experience. That's really cool. Justin, also, I want to ask you a question. How was I know you did Justin TV before. You did your own reality. How was your experience with that?
I mean, it was funny and crazy. I mean, we were not entertaining, right? And you've produced film and TV before, so and unscripted.
You're almost a star. Like when you did that was the start of reality television.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I had to say you're probably one of the inventors now, right, of reality television.
Well, it was. I guess it kind of was at that beginning. Like we were doing it in 2007, but what we didn't know, which we could have had we spent any time in the entertainment industry, is like, in order to get, like you said, 1 minute out of a therapy session or 2 minutes, you need to film 3 hours to get like 2 good minutes, right? And for us, like, we were filming 1 minute per minute that we broadcast. And so it was incredibly boring, right? Like I'd just be walking around or on my, on my phone or like on the, on my computer and talking to a friend. Like even the conversations weren't that good. So, people came and they were just not entertained and they bounced. But it was a fun experience because it was kind of like being catapulted into this, semi-stardom, like from overnight, because people were just so like weirded out by the whole thing. They were like, why would anyone want to do that? And then, people came and checked out our stream and mostly they left. But
that's so cool though. That's very innovative. It's kind of like you had your own Truman Show or
yeah.
What's that movie with Matthew McConaughey when
Ed
he
TV.
was cast it? Ed TV, yeah, you had your own Ed TV. That's pretty cool. I think it's very innovative.
It was funny because after we started Justin TV, we actually didn't watch Ed TV before, but we had watched it like probably a couple nights before we broadcast. We were like gonna launch our show, and Ed TV it's in San Francisco. They did a lot of the stuff that like we were planning on doing, and we were like, no one's ever gonna believe we came up with this idea ourselves. They're gonna think, because it was like basically the same as Ed TV.
Okay, I didn't know the time frame if you came up first or the movie came out.
No, Ed TV definitely was first, but it was pretty funny. That was a fun moment, but it was also, because it was live and it was on the internet, it was like very stressful. Like people pranked us all the time. They like called the cops on us. Like everywhere I'd go, there'd be like people
Oh,
delivering pizzas. Like they would call pizza delivery like to our, every place that I went. Like if I went to a restaurant, they would like order pizzas there, or went to a friend's house or whatever. So
wow.
it got to be like a little bit chaotic.
Wow, that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I think like, you have to, in order to do reality TV, like it wasn't a new format. I think the spiritual successor of that format actually is like Instagram stories and Snapchat stories, where, our kind of core observation, this is like before social media happened. Actually, it was kind of right when social media was starting, like right when Twitter was starting. And my insight was, people are interested in other people. It's kind of the same insight as reality TV. You don't have to be like,
right.
it doesn't have to be a movie or like something scripted. People are just curious about other people, and that's like the natural human condition. And so if you give people a window into someone's life, they're going to be interested in it. And that's like how reality TV works, right? And it's also how I think it's, the stories function and kind of social media in general works. And so we had that insight, but the implementation was awful. Right. Cause like we weren't showing people really the interesting highlights. We were just showing them like everything, which is not interesting. And so if we were smarter, we would have invented like Snapchat or something, or Instagram, but instead
But I'm sure that was still a really great experience though. Something you've probably learned a lot from, and,
yeah,
got to where you are today.
Well, it was kind of like your experience building a restaurant, right? Because it was like incredibly stressful. We were always running out of money. And then eventually we pivoted it to a platform for anyone to broadcast. Like we were like, okay, our show sucks and it's not that funny. But other people were coming and they were saying, hey, how are you doing this? Cause there was no YouTube Live at the time. There was no Instagram Live. So we were like, okay, let's let anybody broadcast. And then we opened it up to the whole like world to broadcast. And then that became this platform. And then from there, that's what turned into Twitch actually.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's
amazing. So it's just like, every failure or not even failure, but every business idea that didn't work out, it leads to something else, and it leads to until you hit something big. So it's so great. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's how I feel. That's how I feel life is, you never know how something is going to impact your life until you experience it, It's even like the pandemic, like you were saying, is this gift in a way for you to learn about yourself, right? And have time for, kind of enforced space for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely forced me to slow down. I was running crazy. I was just running on like empty every single day, and until the pandemics, and then just really forced me to slow down. It's been very positive so far.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, an issue that has been top of mind for a lot of my friends, for myself, and I did a talk on Twitch recently with the members of the Twitch team about it. Like, tell us what's going on with the Asian hate crime wave that's happening in the U.S.
I'm just really happy right now. There's more awareness to it. That's number one. It's because, during the summer when that old grandma got set on fire in Brooklyn, there's only a couple of us really posting about it. And we were really only, also at the time, I didn't have that big of a platform. And majority of people didn't hear about it, and now that, because of the more and more cases are happening, and there's still new cases every single day. It's 1,900% increase reported in 2020, but that's only reported because, again, in the Asian culture, we don't like to talk about things. Even sometime, I was listening to this talk that I think it was the New York has a special tech team that specializes in Asian hate crimes. They will go to victims' house and they don't want to speak. They don't want to speak to the police. They don't want to speak to the reporter because it's the Asian culture. You don't want to bring attention to yourself. Don't make waves. Don't speak up. You don't want to bring attention. You rather, and I think it's also a little bit of pride, to it. So again, just the reported case was 1,900% increase just from 2020 of Asian hate crimes. And now that I'm just really happy there's more awareness, because awareness is obviously the first step, right? When I posted a series of videos on my Instagram, majority of people were like, "This was happening. I didn't realize this was happening. This is crazy." So, but again, it's going to be a long movement. It's not something that we can change overnight. And again, Asian hate crime didn't just start last year. It's been going on. But we need to look at the media stuff, which is make sure, our elders are safe walking home, to awareness, education, as well as, I think also offering, mental wellness programs just so they can talk about it. And then it goes to, as big as, maybe policy change and putting the right people in office. But, all we can do is just step by step. And then it's still very early on in the movement. I just hope, more and more people will be aware of it and do something about it.
What do you think is causing this? It's a pretty tremendous spike, right? 19x in like a year. What do you think is causing this kind of attacks against the community?
I think a big part of it was Trump. The Chinese virus. I would listen to his press conference pretty much every morning when the first pandemic started, because it's just not 9 a.m. I'm turning on the news, and when reporters are asking him about why he causes the Chinese virus and why he and they were also bring to his attention about these hate crimes that's going on. He doesn't really answer it. He kind of talks in circles and he rerouted. I think leadership, and also I think there's a lot of hurt in the world right now. And they want to redirect that to something else, right? They want to, and then the easy target might just be the Asian Americans because that's the easy way to target. But it's a lot to do with their own self. They're not happy, they're hurt with what's going on. Some of them are losing jobs and losing their houses and not able to feed their kids. So it's a cycle, and But at the end of the day, we have to try to just spread more love and humanity stuff. It's just, as a human, that's not what we do. Just it doesn't matter what color we are. Just as human beings, we shouldn't hurt each other.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message. I love that. Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to ask you about was, the future of Asians in media, because you're like, I feel like Bling Empire, it's like Crazy Rich Asians. It was this watershed moment where after Crazy Rich Asians, it was like, which I love the movie, but it was like kind of just like a normal rom-com movie. It wasn't like an Oscar-winning movie or anything, but it just exploded. And because every Asian American person I knew was like wanted to support it. Like all my friends were buying out theaters for it. And then I feel like Bling Empire is like another kind of similar event where everybody I know was watching it. People who don't love reality, like who hate reality TV were watching it. And so like where does it go from here?
I think with the Asian resident, Asians were very, very, very underrepresented in Hollywood and the media, right? And so again, all we can do is just project by project. For us, for Bling Empire, in order for Bling Empire to be as successful as it was for season 1 and having that platform, we have to thank Crazy Rich Asians, Fresh Off the Boat, even Kim's Convenience Store, which is up in Canada, they did up in Canada. All these projects paved the way for us, right? But there's never been a reality show. So we're hoping that, with Bling Empire, it's another genre for people to watch, and hopefully we'll pave the way for other all Asian casts, because, Hollywood's still business. End of the day, it's always like, well, if I put all Asian cast, am I really going to make my money back? Or there's no real Asian actress who is bankable in foreign sales, blah, blah. But we're also showing, because of the success of these projects, we're showing Hollywood, Asians is a business. Invest in us. We can make money. We have power. We have community. So I think all these projects are really great. And then again, hopefully with the Bling Empire, it's just another genre to open more doors and just pave the way for another all Asian cast show.
I love that. I'd also love to see casts that weren't necessarily all Asian, but just like have a lot of Asians who are not playing like the token role,
Exactly, because the token role of Asians always like kung fu, there's all like martial arts stuff, but I want to see a leading Asian man play, have a love story with with different ethnicity as well, kind of like Henry Golding did that movie called Symbol Favor, I think, yeah, not my favorite movie, but it was just great seeing him playing a leading role, so yeah, just we got to invest our resources, invest our money behind Asian talent. And again, it's not just in front of the camera, right? Behind the cameras too, like with Chloe Zhao being the first ever female Asian director winning these awards, and like all this stuff is so great. Lulu Wang for Farewell last year. We have to invest in our invest in these talents because a lot of them are so talented, and just really kind of put our resources and money and just make some noise, so in front of camera talents, yes, but as well as behind the camera talents.
I love that. So I'd love to finish up with bringing in Jenny, who's on our Discord server, and we usually let her ask a few questions from the audience.
Awesome. Hi, Jenny.
Hey, Kelly. So I'm the Quest Fellow working with Justin on the episode. I was just wondering, so having grown up in an Asian community, there's always been a lot of success comparison with like classmates, family, friends, and even siblings. So I was wondering, with you having been a talent manager and producer, do you feel like there's some sort of almost like cannibalism within the Asian community? Like, is there more competition or support amongst ourselves? And then, with an American and Asian grown talent, I think as a model, I've kind of felt some of this at castings. So I'm wondering, how do you handle it?
Yeah, it's so funny you asked that because it is true. When you're growing up, my mom's always like, my friend's kid did this. They went to this school. They're doing this. They got number one in their piano recital, whatever it is. And, that's why it's a very unhealthy competitiveness. I think there's a healthy way of fun, to when you compete, but at the same time, we have to support each other, and same thing with all Asians and women. Sometimes, also with women, they tend to, they're very competitive and it brings insecurity. But at the end of the day, like, we need to lift each other up, by us working together, by us coming together and lifting each other up, we're going to get a lot further. That's also why, I'm huge, I speak out a lot about women empowerment, empowered women, empower women, because again, we need to stand together. We need to lift each other up. You can't drag yourself down. Just got to keep lifting other people up. By you lifting other people up, it's also going to lift yourself up as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That's beautiful.
Are we good on time?
Love that.
I have one more spicy question,
okay.
Kelly.
All right, ask
so
more.
Go for it, Jenny.
I'll shoot my shot. So a lot of the headlines, I think, like if you do a Google, are about you and Andrew's relationship. But I think, like, having seen a lot of your interviews, I know you're super career oriented, like crazy boss lady. How do you feel about that?
I think it's funny because when we first started shooting Bling Empire, it was like the story was always going to be more focused on my work, but then my relationship with Andrews completely took over the whole series, and they cut most of my work stuff out. But people want to watch what they want to watch. With Andrew and I breaking up, we did a joint, statement because I have a tremendous amount of respect and love for him. It's just not right for both of our lives. I think right now, for I can't really control it. For me, I always believe in focus on what you want to control. Same thing with, what you want to amplify, the message you want to amplify. So for me, I did that message and I'm just going to leave it as it is. Same thing with, when on Instagram, people write shitty comments and bad comments, but again, I don't respond to the negative comments because I'm like, why bring attention and bring more of my energy to the negative? But I'm happy to amplify positive messages because for me, I just want to, I want to spread love. I want to spread positivity.
Love that. Well, Kelly, that's it. Thanks for joining me. That was an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Justin. It's my pleasure. So I've been a fan of yours for a long time and I've been following your career. So I'm very honored to be here.
I appreciate that. And I'm honored that now that you're in the kind of not just saying yes to everything, that you would still make the time to talk to me. That's awesome.
Anytime.
All right. That was my conversation with Kelly. Some takeaways from this episode. Number 1, try to pave the way for others with your work. Like Kelly said, the reason that Bling Empire was so successful was because of predecessors like Crazy Rich Asians or Fresh Off the Boat. And Bling Empire is going to open even more doors for Asians in media. So we should all spend some time appreciating those who came before us and paving the way with our work for those following in our footsteps. Number 2, learn to be alone with yourself. Now, this is a super important skill. Kelly was a hustler, but that 24/7 hustling mentality did not help her with her wellness practice. It was when she learned to say no and spend time with herself that she was able to free up a lot more headspace. And that's helped her keep going and not burn out. Learning to be alone with yourself is so important, and it's something that if you want to go far in this world, you need to master. Number 3, cutting your burn rate isn't as scary as it sounds. All of us has been trained by the world to think that more is better, but that is false, and you can always live below your means. Kelly cut her burn rate from $500,000 every month to $20,000, which, to be honest, is still a lot. And that's like a 96% decrease. If she can do it, you can do it too, I promise. So if you like this episode, drop us a rating on Apple Podcasts and bang that 5 stars. Please also comment what you've learned. I love to read the comments. Shout out to Jenny, the Quest Fellow from our Discord server that helped with this podcast. You can apply to be a fellow and check out all things Quest at listen.justin.quest. And next week, we've got Eric Nam, Korean sensation, K-pop star, performer, entertainer, and entrepreneur. I'm really excited to bring him onto the show, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.